Hello, math humans. We're going to do C1 today. We're going to be talking about linear equations and functions. Our objectives are that we're going to manage slope, revisit increasing and decreasing, and then write equations of lines and find x and y intercepts. So for starters, slope is rise over run, and it is sometimes written as delta y over delta x. This is my shorthand notation, which means the change in y over the change in x. And if we do the math, it means y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then this is going to equal the slope. If I have a point, I have x1 and y1. And if I have a second point, I would call it x2 and y2. So it's the difference in the y's divided by the difference in the x's. If I have a line, and that line is going uphill, then my slope, which is, here's the delta y, and this would be the delta x, and my slope would be positive. So a positive slope means that the graph is going uphill, which is kind of just slang. It also means that it is an increasing function. And remember that increasing means as x gets bigger, then the y's also get bigger. Okay, so positive slope is uphill, and it means that it is an increasing function. And an increasing function meant that as the x values got bigger, the y values also got bigger. On the other hand, if I have a graph that looks like this, notice that my delta y is going to be negative because it's going down, and then my delta x is still positive. This is a negative slope, which in slang kind of means downhill, and it is a decreasing function, and that means as x gets bigger, y gets smaller. Okay, alrighty. So for our functions, if it has a negative slope, it is downhill, it is also decreasing. And decreasing means that as the x values get bigger, the y values get smaller. Okay, so now let's do some examples where we calculate slope. So for example number 1, we're going to be given the point 3,2 and the point 6,8. And I want to calculate the slope and determine whether it is positive or negative, increasing or decreasing. Okay? So because my slope equation is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, I usually assign, I would write a 2 and a 1 because I need to be consistent and then I don't make silly math mistakes. Here's my y values. If it's helpful, you can also label as x and y. So it's going to be 8 minus 2 over 6 minus 3. 8 minus 2 is 6. 6 minus 3 is 3. And so this is 2 over 1. So therefore, I have a positive slope. And if the slope is positive, that means that the function is increasing. Okay, so that was nice and easy. All right, for our next example, example number 2, it's going to be the same type of example. We're going to be given the point negative 312 and the point 5, negative 1. And I'm going to have the same directions. I want to determine the slope, and then I'm going to determine positive and negative, increasing or decreasing. Okay? When I do math, I always write my formulas out without numbers in them because then I personally make less math mistakes when I can see what I'm trying to do. I'm going to label this as my 2's, and this is the 1's. And if you need to, you can label X and Y just to keep your brains turned on the right direction. Y2, a negative 1 minus 12 over 5 minus a minus 3. A negative 1 and a negative 12 is a negative 13. 5 minus a minus is 5 plus 3. So this is a negative 13 over 8. The slope is a negative 13 over 8. It is negative. Therefore, the function is decreasing. Okay? So that's actually nice and easy. You just have to be careful with your signs when you are working with slope. The next thing that we're going to talk about are linear equations. And linear means that it is a line, which means that the power is 1. Okay? There's 3 different types of ways to write equations. So there's 3 different ways to write equations of lines. We're going to focus on one. We're going to focus on y equals mx plus b. Technically, it's called the slope-intercept form. Okay, we're going to call it y equals mx plus b. M is obviously going to be our slope. B is going to be the y-intercept. In this particular course, the worksheets call it the vertical intercept. Okay, so you need to make sure that you understand both sets of words. Alrighty. If we need to find our y-intercept, that means that x is equal to 0. And for our x-intercept, which this particular course calls it the horizontal intercept, that means that y is equal to 0. So I can do the math to find my x and y intercepts. Okay? So if I have the graph of a line, just to make sure that we're all clear, and here's my cute little line, this would be the x-intercept, this would be the y-intercept. Okay? All right, so let's do our next example. So example number 3, we're going to be given y is equal to a negative 4x minus 8. I want to determine the slope, the x and y intercepts. And again, this particular book calls it horizontal and vertical. Okay? So my equation is y equals a negative 4x minus 8, and I have y equals mx plus b. My slope is a negative 4. Technically, it's a negative 4 over 1 if you were graphing by hand. My b is equal to a negative 8, which means that my y-intercept is going to be 0, negative 8. Now I need to find the x-intercept, and so I'm going to do it algebraically, and I'm going to do it by letting y equal 0. So if y is equal to 0, then I get 0 is equal to a negative 4x minus 8. When I move the 8 to the other side, it becomes positive. So I'm going to get 8 is equal to a negative 4x. I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by a negative 4. And I get x is equal to 8 divided by a negative 4 is a negative 2. So the x-intercept is going to be negative 2 comma 0. When we report x-intercepts, it needs to be in ordered pair notation. Okay, and again, I found my x-intercept by letting y equal 0 because here y is equal to 0. All right, that was pretty straightforward. All right, for our next example, example number 4, we're going to be given a negative 4x plus 5y is equal to 20, and I want to put the equation in y equals mx plus b form. I want to determine the slope, the x-intercept, and the y-intercept. So before I put the equation in standard form, I'm actually going to solve for the x and y-intercept first. So for the x-intercept, I know that y is equal to 0. So in this equation, I'm going to have a negative 4x plus 5 times 0 is 20. 5 times 0 is 0. So I have a negative 4x equals 20. Divide both sides by a negative 4, and I get x is equal to a negative 5. So my x-intercept is going to be negative 5, 0. So for the y-intercept, that's what happens when x is equal to 0. Again, I'm just going to use the original equation. So I'm going to do a negative 4 times 0 plus 5 times y is equal to 20. This is 0. And then I get 5y is equal to 20. Divide both sides by 5, and I get y is equal to 4. So my y-intercept is going to be 0, 4. So keeping the equation in this form actually makes finding the x and y intercepts really easy. So the last thing that I'm going to do is put the equation in the y equals mx plus b. So that means I need to solve this equation for y. So I'm going to get 5y equals, I take this to the other side. When a value or an expression crosses the equal sign, it becomes positive. So this is going to become 4x and then plus 20. And then I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 5. So I'm going to get 5 divided by 5 is y is 4/5 x plus 20 divided by 5. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So I'm going to get y equals 4/5 x plus 4. And there's my y equals mx plus b. So that was actually pretty easy. Okay. Alrighty. I think we are done. Is that true? Yep, that is true. We are done for today. Yeehaw. Have a great afternoon. I will see you soon.